The PS1 had Final Fantasy VII, Castlevania, and Resident Evil getting all the attention. But underneath those giants was a whole other layer of RPGs, doing things that the industry wouldn't catch up to for another decade. Games with branching political narratives, combat systems that function more like puzzles than menus, and design ideas so ahead of their time, they still feel fresh now. This list is about those games. Final Hearts hit the PS1 in 1996, a full year before Final Fantasy Tactics, and it was already doing things that felt dangerous for the genre. The blood, the politics, the compression of every cutscene into a tense, no-frills delivery that treated the player like an adult. Following Ash Lambert from naive soldier to rebel commander through a web of betrayal and institutional corruption, the game told a political thriller with the bluntness of early Game of Thrones. No chosen one, just systems of power eating their own. The combat reflects that economy. Maps are compact and brutal, with elevation advantages making positioning genuinely critical. Losing a unit means losing them permanently, which forces deliberate, patient play from the start. The blood splatter effects, cartoonish but shocking at the time, punctuated every kill in a way that kept battles from feeling sterile. Class promotion trees gave each unit a real trajectory, and branching class paths rewarded investment in understanding how roles function together on the map. The weakness is polish. Hit percentages can feel arbitrary at higher difficulties, and some maps spike in difficulty relative to others in a way that reads more like uneven design than intentional challenge. The story, while punchy, wraps up its threads quickly. Final Hearts is not a long game, and the pacing accelerates past moments that deserve more space. A sequel followed that changed the formula significantly, and neither captured quite the same terse, grimly political energy of the first. For what it is, a fast, efficient, morally serious tactical RPG, it holds up as one of the genre's most underappreciated founding documents. Arc the Lad 2 was doing something in 1996 that the industry didn't fully embrace for years, treating its sequel as a continuation rather than a clean reset. The save transfer from Arc the Lad, I was the most ambitious implementation of this on the PS1. Your characters carry their actual levels and inventory forward, and the game remembered them as people who'd already been through something. For players trained to expect blank slates between entries, this continuity felt genuinely unusual. The game itself expanded dramatically on its predecessor. Towns, dungeons, a hunter's guild for optional bounty missions, and a monster capture mechanic for one party member gave the experience real scope. Grid combat prioritized speed. Basic attacks execute immediately. Animations are fast, and characters can jump over obstacles in ways that distinguish it from contemporaries like Tactics Ogre. Weapon and armor leveling added granular equipment progression the first game lacked entirely. The save state of Arc 1 characters being carried forward into shared battles with Arc 2's cast created moments of real continuity the collection format made possible. The roughness shows. Army battles are more attrition contests than tactical puzzle, decided more by luck than positioning. Some dungeons run long, without save points in a way that feels careless. The story tries servicing both ilk's personal arc and the wider war narrative simultaneously, creating pacing problems when threads compete. The final battle is notoriously exhausting. Still, as a tactical RPG building a continuous world across entries and rewarding investment with consequence, it was years ahead of what anyone else was attempting. Front Mission 3 operates from a premise most tactical RPGs never bother with. The human inside the machine matters. Each Wanzer is assembled from individually replaceable torso, arm, and leg components, each with its own HP and weapon slots. Destroying an enemy's arm removes that weapon from play. Crippling legs locks them in place. Pilots have a separate HP bar and can be forcibly ejected from their mech mid-battle, at which point you can steal the machine, fight the now exposed pilot on foot, or simply move on. Nothing tactical from the era treated the body inside the armor as a distinct target, a seemingly minor choice early in the game. Accompanying your friend Ryogo on a delivery or refusing sends you down one of two completely separate storylines with different factions, characters, and missions. Seeing the full picture requires 2 playthroughs, which dramatically changes what you understand about the events of both campaigns. The in-game internet system adds unexpected texture. Browsing fake forums and news reveals conspiracies the main story only gestures toward. The pacing is deliberate to the point of demanding patience. Skills are learned through equipping parts and using them in battle, which rewards hardware commitment over flexible experimentation. Some maps require specific approaches that make difficulty spikes feel more punishing than instructive. Dialogue-heavy story sections lean heavily on static portraits in visual novel fashion, functional but visually dry. For players willing to accept those conditions, Front Mission 3 remains mechanically distinctive and genuinely forward-thinking. A game that treated warfare as more than abstraction years before it became a design priority. Grandia's initiative bar is one of the most purely satisfying mechanical inventions the PS1 era produced. Actions have 2 stages, command and execution, with a visible timeline showing every character and enemy's position in both. If an enemy commits to an attack during the command window, but you hit it with a cancel-capable strike before it executes, the attack disappears entirely. Watching a boss's charge-up animation vanish mid-sequence is one of the great small pleasures in the genre. That system elevates every encounter. Positioning affects how quickly characters close distance to attack, influencing their timing on the bar. Area spells create real trade-offs between damage efficiency and turn delay. Enemies use the same cancel mechanics against you, which means neglecting your healer's position can leave them locked in a knockback loop at exactly the wrong moment. The game balances this well. Most fights aren't punishing, but the depth rewards engagement throughout. What's harder to defend is the story. Grandia wears its optimism as a feature. Adventure, friendship, believe in yourself. And that's genuinely refreshing against the era's grim, dark tendencies. But the plot stays at that surface level through its considerable length, following every familiar beat without a subversive moment. The English voice acting ranges from charming to grating. The 3D overworld navigation is occasionally disorienting. None of that touches the combat, though. The battle system alone justifies the investment, and nothing else from the PS1 era does what it does. When later games borrowed the cancel mechanic, they were acknowledging something Grandia had already solved. Breath of Fire 3 treats Dragon Transformation as a laboratory. Ryu splices up to 3 genetic sequences together, each combination producing a distinct form with specific elements, ability sets, and stat profiles. Combine Flame and Eldritch for an enhanced spell-casting fire dragon, including Inferno. Stack Force and Trance for the Myrmidon. Swift, high attack, manageable AP cost. Mix Miracle with Shadow, and you summon the Behemoth, which absorbs your entire party into one massive creature. Some combinations produce unexpected results, and discovering them through experimentation genuinely feels like creation rather than menu selection. AP maintenance adds real cost to staying in dragon form. Every turn you transform drains AP, which means overpowering fights isn't free. Gene acquisition is spread across the world, so the system reveals itself gradually. The Master System, where characters apprentice to specific teachers and adopt their stat growth patterns, adds another customization layer outside combat that gives long sessions genuine direction. Pacing is the main issue. The story splits across child and adult Ryu, and the teenage section creates a structural lull that some players never recover from. Random encounters feel excessive in certain dungeons, and some dragon forms are noticeably more useful than others in ways the game doesn't communicate clearly. The final emotional beats don't fully earn the philosophical weight the story reaches for. Still, The gene splicing system feels like nothing else the PS1 era attempted. It treated transformation as something you could think through and build toward, rather than a button you pressed when things got difficult. Persona 2: Eternal Punishment made gossip a mechanic in 2000, and it was actually about something. In the fictional city of Sumeru, repeated belief turns language into reality. And as a journalist protagonist investigating this phenomenon, you collect rumors from NPCs and bring them to spreader contacts, manifesting actual changes in the game world. A bar starts selling weapons. A hidden shop unlocks. Enemies get buffed based on what's circulating. The city itself becomes a resource you actively manage, and that system is thematically consistent with a story about the power of collective belief. The adult cast matters too. Maya, Alala, Kitsuya, and Baofu are working adults navigating a conspiracy with a weight of people who've already been through things. The writing doesn't simplify them. The contact system lets you negotiate mid-battle through character-specific dialogue, extracting items or triggering persona fusions. Every character can switch between multiple personas, giving each party member real, tactical flexibility. The age is real, though. Random encounters are frequent and unavoidable. Dungeons are visually repetitive, and the UI requires patience that modern players may struggle to extend. The deepest problem is that experiencing the full story requires Innocent Sin, which didn't receive an official English localization until the PSP remake in 2011, meaning most players encountered this game orphaned from the first half of its own narrative. The combat is functional, but predates the formula that made the series its reputation. For players who engage with it on its own terms, though, nothing else from the PS1 era turns rumor and gossip into this kind of living mechanical system. Tactics Ogre, Let Us Cling Together, put a defining moral gut punch in the first chapter, not the last. Ordered to massacre civilians to frame an opposing ethnic group, you can follow orders or refuse. That single moment splits the game into 3 separate political routes: law, chaos, neutral, each with different battles, different characters living or dying, and up to 8 distinct endings. This kind of branching narrative consequence didn't exist in mainstream games yet. It arrived in 1995 inside a war story modeled after real ethnic conflicts in Europe and Asia, written by Yasumi Matsuno as a direct rejection of the clean heroism he'd built before. The grid-based combat carries that weight. Characters who fall are gone permanently unless you reload, and enemy AI frequently occupies the high ground, forcing real thought about elevation, elemental affinity, and unit positioning before you move. The class system is wide and branching, with certain units only available through specific routes. Battles can run extremely long, and the War and Report lore database expects serious engagement rather than passive button pressing. The trade-offs are real. Fights become repetitive in the back half, with too many maps sharing similar objectives. Hit rates are often frustratingly low even with well-built units, and grinding random battles to stay competitive is genuinely tedious rather than satisfying. Getting to the major story payoffs demands 40 to 80 hours of methodical play before all the branches reveal themselves. For players willing to meet it on those terms, Tactics Ogre remains one of the most politically serious RPGs ever made, asking what justice actually means before most of the industry understood that RPGs could even ask the question. Xenogears runs 2 complete combat systems simultaneously. On foot, each character fights with fighting game logic. Weak, medium, and strong attacks mapped to buttons, combinable into sequences that unlock death blow moves. And used action points carry over between turns, so you can accumulate AP across multiple rounds, then unleash a chain of death blows in a single devastating turn. The rhythm rewards patience and timing rather than just selecting the highest damage option. The gear system shifts the logic entirely. Inside your mech, death blows unlock through accumulated attack levels, and fuel management replaces AP. Every attack costs fuel, and conservation becomes a constant strategic calculation. Choosing between aggressive spending and careful output against the enemy's remaining HP creates a meaningfully different decision space than the foot combat. Both systems reward different thinking from the same player, which keeps the experience from going stale. The collapse on Disc 2 is real and documented. Development time ran out, and the second half of the planned experience was delivered mostly through long stretches of narration summarizing events you were supposed to play through. The story, drawing on various mythology, is extraordinary in ambition and frequently incoherent in execution. Random encounters are relentless. Ether magic is largely underpowered for most of the game, making half the character toolkit feel incomplete. What remains despite all of this is still remarkable. A combat design so inventive that the games it influenced took years to appear, wrapped around the most philosophically ambitious narrative the PS1 attempted. Vagrant's story arrived in 2000 and made everything around it look less ambitious. No towns, no party, no shops, just Ashley Riot, a haunted city called Leomond, and one of the most intricate combat architectures the PS1 ever contained. Every enemy has individual limbs you can target, each with its own affinity to weapon types. An arm might absorb piercing damage while being vulnerable to blunt. Disabling it removes that enemy's associated attacks entirely. The risk system ties directly into this decision-making. The more you chain attacks, the higher your risk gauge climbs, reducing accuracy while raising critical hit chance. You're constantly calculating how aggressive to be, a tension that functions more like resource management than standard turn-based combat. Weapon crafting layers on top. You break down gear into components, combine them in workshops, and build weapons tuned to specific enemy classes and elements. There are no shops anywhere, so optimization requires genuine knowledge of how everything connects. The game explains almost none of this. Boss fights become walls when your weapon affinities are wrong, and you don't know why. The crafting storage system requires saving and reloading to navigate, which kills the momentum of experimentation. New Game Plus opens the real depth with new areas and bosses, meaning first-time players work through an extended prologue before the system fully opens. For the patient, mechanically curious player willing to learn on its terms, Vagrant's story delivers something the PS1 rarely managed, a game that treats every fight as a precision problem with a right and a wrong answer. Suikoden 2 opens with a betrayal between childhood friends, and it never lets up. Within the first hour, you're watching massacres, political collapses, and the slow unraveling of a peace always built on sand. The story is built around a regional war, not saving the world, just one contested corner of it, and that human-scale focus makes every loss hit harder than most games 3 times its budget. The 108 stars of Destiny mechanic is what made this technically extraordinary. Building an army from scratch, with each new recruit expanding your castle headquarters with shops, mini-games, a restaurant, and dozens of unique personalities, was unlike anything else in 1998. Some joined through story beats. Others require specific conditions you'd never find without a guide. Getting all 108 unlocks the true ending, which makes the recruitment process feel genuinely consequential rather than decorative. Watching your castle transform from a ramshackle hideout into a full fortress over 60-plus hours is one of the great slow-burn satisfactions in RPG history. The main party combat is 6 character battles with rune magic and character-specific unite attacks, and it's fast, clean, and enjoyable. The army battles, by contrast, are frustrating. The grid-based war sequences are largely decided by luck and attrition rather than actual strategy, and they occupy time without contributing meaningful gameplay. Some characters can die permanently in these segments without warning. The localization shipped with notable errors that occasionally break immersion. These aren't deal breakers, but the gap between the game's highs and its rough edges is wide enough that first-time players should go in knowing both exist.